All right, and welcome back to JBSR Plays It. It's gonna be. I know I missed last week. I had some technical difficulties going on. I couldn't even record anything. I basically had no access to my computer because my my keyboard screwed up, and of course I don't have an extra one laying around, so I had to wait until I got one, and then didn't have time after that. So we missed a couple weeks of football. I'm not gonna bother going all the way back to week 4. Because a lot of stuff that everyone was talking about with, oh my god, the Patriots are done. Now it's sort of like, oh wait, no, they still have Tom Brady at quarterback. Now we'll start off there real quick. I never thought the Patriots were done. Like I know the division they play in. The Bills, Kyle Orton is the starting quarterback now. Emmanuel hit the bench. The Dolphins are a mess, and the Jets are in even worse shape. So I knew the Patriots still had a chance to contend. Like 9-7 can take this division, so that wasn't the concern. The defense isn't that bad. It just looked bad against Kansas City. And Tom Brady is on the decline, yes, but he's not like, oh my god, he should be on the bench for Jimmy Garoppolo. Bad. He's still good. He's still a top 7 or 8 quarterback in this league right now. He's just got nobody to throw it to. He's got a bunch of wide receivers who would make great number 3s on most teams, and they're trying to force him into being number 1s. He's got an offensive line that was in shambles. It looked a little better this week. And he's got a tight end who is at the end of his career, and I don't think people want to acknowledge that because it's Rob Gronkowski and he's a beast and all this other stuff, but he's almost done. He's going to retire before Brady. He's had way too many surgeries. He beats himself too much. I guess he's got some brittle bone disease, or at least that's what a panicky Patriots fan told me. Patriots aren't done. A lot of teams aren't done. Unless you are Jacksonville, Oakland, or... No, that's it. Maybe the Titans. Trying to flip through real quick and see who the hell is terrible. You're not done. Even the Jets at 1-4, the Bucks at 1-4, because of the divisions they play in, they're not done yet. So what I'm going to do... This video is obviously... It should be going up on a Thursday. The next video will go up probably Friday or Saturday. So I will just continue on. So let's look at the Thursday games. Oh, and because I kept saying, we don't have any big storylines. I guess the big one, and I know it's a few weeks old now, but I still had to mention it because you guys know my love affair with it. Devin Still, I keep saying his name wrong. I think it's Devin Still. His daughter had surgery to remove her lymph nodes and the cancerous tumor and all that. So she's not cancer-free, but it was a successful surgery and a huge step towards her recovery. Now, I didn't realize, I heard pancreatic cancer. That's the initial reports I'd always heard. It's pediatric. People are just dumb. And I'm dumb for not doing further research into it. But again, I'm not actually a journalist. So she's got a 50-50 shot. So this is a good first step. In the Patriots game this week, the cheerleaders came out wearing Devin Still jerseys, and he had a big press conference. This is, I am still rooting for the Bengals. I will still pick them every week, even in weeks, as you'll see this week, where I know I'm going to lose. Now, I'm trying to figure it out. So week 4 with my picks, I didn't do so hot. I think I was like 5-7, 5-8, 6-7, something like that. I don't know the exact amount. But this past week, I did much better. There's only 2 buys. So I was 13-2, I believe. Who did I get wrong? What did I get wrong? 1 there. And that one. Oh, no. Okay, wait, never mind. I was 12-3. That's what it was. I had 12 wins. Still, 12-3 is a pretty good record. I'll figure out my overall standings later on. So I guess first up, we should go with the Thursday night game. The Packers in 5 days went from 1-2 and panicking to 3-2 and in control of that division. Because it's not like anybody else looks really good right now. Aaron Rodgers is still a beast. And, 42-10 is a crushing score. But again, Mike Asiata is the running back for the Vikings right now. You've got Christian Ponder had to start at quarterback. Because Teddy Bridgewater, after a great first start, went out injured. He should be back next week. Well, this Sunday. But, Christian Ponder is someone I didn't even know was still on the roster. And they had to have him in there to start. So Aaron Rodgers, 3 touchdowns on 17 attempts. And they didn't need him to. He just, Eddie Lacy finally showed up. Good for the Packers. They'll be fine. They'll be fine because they have Aaron Rodgers. He's not falling off. He's still young enough. We don't have to worry about the decline with Aaron Rodgers. He's still probably got a good 3 or 4 years left before we're really talking about his decline. And even then, that might not even happen then. So next up, we've got the game with some controversy, apparently, on both sides. The Buffalo Bills, 17-14 over Detroit at Detroit. The controversy comes in 2 forms. First off, the Bills, after the game, carried Jim Schwartz off the field for defeating the Lions, who had fired him. Now, I'm supposed to be a fan of this because it was his defense. That's why they won. It was his defense. But he got fired from Detroit for being a terrible head coach. He wasn't screwed. He didn't go, Dennis Allen, I could see where you'd have some rage because you get a shitty roster and they force you into, you have to try and do something with it. And you get 2.5 years and no one ever adds any real talent. So Dennis Allen, I could see needing that kind of revenge. Jim Schwartz had all the talent in the world and he blew it. 5 seasons, even though he took over an 0-16 team. What was it? They were 7-9 the year after that. They made the playoffs 2 years after that. Calvin Johnson. Matthew Stafford is still a pretty good quarterback. He'll at least get the yards up for you. Throw some picks, but, better than most of the quarterbacks in the league. And he's supposed to be a defensive specialist, and you give him one of the most solid 1-2 punches at defensive tackle in the league. There is absolutely no reason for him to fail, and he did. So they carried him off the field because he asked them to. 2 months ago, he said, if we beat Detroit in Detroit, I want you guys to carry me off the field. I like the fieriness. I like that in the coach. I like the competitiveness. I love, was it Schwartz who chased down Harbaugh, or Harbaugh who chased down Schwartz because of the freaking, the handshake or whatever after the game? I like that. But that was a little uncalled for. But then on the other side, apparently fans were pointing, or one fan had a laser pointer and were putting it in the face of Kyle Orton and the freaking kicker and all that shit. Dan Carpenter still hits, a massive 58-yarder to win the game. Marcel Darius with a huge freaking game. Mike Evans with a huge drop right there. The defense played really well. Kyle Orton threw a pick 6, but other than that, was mediocre. He had a decent game, I guess. He completed 70% of his passes. 308 yards. First 300-yard passer since Ryan Fitzpatrick in Week 10 of the 2012 season. So, he had a decent game. Sammy Watkins. It's that's what happens when a quarterback actually throws the ball at the wide receiver. So, I'm all for Kyle Orton. This is sort of the topic I wanted to talk about before, but I was for Kyle Orton from the beginning. Because the problem with E.J. Manuel, he wasn't taking any shots. I understand being conservative and being a game manager, and that's all well and good. It worked well for Chad Pennington. But he took no shots. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Daddy duty calls. You might have heard the baby crying on the monitor or heard my fiance calling for me. So I decided to do diaper change. But no, with Kyle Orton, he wasn't terrible when he was in Denver. He was decent when he was in Chicago. But remember, those are the Chicago teams that were all about defense, and Marty Booker was your best wide receiver. So the fact that he managed to do much of anything is impressive. But, he had over 4,000 yards passing when he was in Denver before he got, and in the next season he was decent, but the team was so bad they benched him for Tebow because they were, what were they, fucking 2-5 or something? They just wanted to know what they had because obviously that was becoming a lost season. Tebow turned it around and ended up leading them to, 8-8 or 9-7, making the playoffs. And Tim Tebow's out of the league, and Kyle Orton is making $5.5 million a year. So I think Orton's a good pick over Manuel for right now. I'm not saying. See, everyone thinks that EJ Manuel's done with his career in Buffalo. Not necessarily. He had a small sample size. You're trying to win right now. There's going to be a new ownership coming in, and on top of that, the Patriots look vulnerable for once, for the first time in a long time. I don't think their win this week is like, they're still going to go, they're going to go 14-2. They're going to run a table. Maybe it's the difference between 9-7 and 10-6 for them. They still look vulnerable. There's still a lot of weaknesses. They respond well. Because they always have. Like I said, I try never to pick against the Patriots when they lose, but I also always pick the Bengals every week now, so didn't have a choice this week. Next, we're moving on to Chicago versus the Panthers. Panthers win 31-24. I don't really have anything to say about this, but can we just continue with the running back watch? Who the hell? D. Reeves. What is Carolina? I think I saw the stat. They're on something like their 7th running back starting this year, something. I don't know what the hell is going on over there, but they're 3-2 despite that. Cam Newton isn't running. He's all banged up. But is Cam Newton becoming like when Donovan McNabb broke his ankle in that Arizona game way back in the day, and then magically he throw like 300 some odd yards and 3 touchdowns, which, by the way, back then those were impressive stats. That wasn't just an average Peyton Manning game. Those were huge stats back then. But yeah, and then from there he's became more of a pocket passer who could also move, kind of like Ben Roethlisberger, but with a little more mobility. Maybe Cam Newton's moving in that direction. He's not a bad pocket passer. It's not like RG3 where he can make throws sometimes, but most of the time he's not. Cam Newton, 4,500 yards his rookie year, and he's only gotten better ever since. This is a guy who can throw the ball, so maybe we're seeing an evolution in his game. I am all for that. I've always been a firm believer in pocket passing. I'm very old school, and you'll hear me get to that in a few games. 'Cause I am a very old school type guy. I still think the 4-3 defense is what everyone should run. I still think the fullback should be a valued position. Playing as the Bucs, Mike Allstott's one of my favorite players of all time. I actually, for that brief month-long period in high school when I tried to play football, before I realized the equipment there sucked and they only made one large helmet, and unfortunately I have a humongous head. So I studied film of Mike Allstott from that Super Bowl against the Raiders. Just watching him throw blocks and run the ball and everything. He was amazing. He's the only player I've ever watched tape on, because I'm not that kind of film study type of guy. Which is probably a good thing I never went into the NFL, because I would have been out. But yeah, so, seeing Cam with that mobility, sort of like Steve Young type, I'm fine with. And I'm not going to say old school, like I don't think you should ever pass the ball, But I'm always one, it's like, you know what, you threw for 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 10 picks. I'm okay with that. I don't see that as a failed season. I know it's mediocre now, but I'd still say it's a pretty good season. I'd say quarterback is not one of your issues if your quarterback's producing those numbers. I don't need 4,500 yards. Just, don't throw 4,500 interceptions. And now, continuing a common theme. Well, 2 common themes, actually. 1 team specific, however. Browns win 29-28 over the Titans in the largest road comeback in NFL history, and I think it's the third largest comeback in general of all time. Helped, of course, by the fact that Jake Locker, he started again in this game. He missed last week because he was injured, and then he left with a hand injury. This guy just refuses to stay on the field. Jesus Christ, Doug Martin, was that jump worth it? Ask yourself that right now. Was that jump worth it? Be thankful I turned injuries off because you would be dead, sir. The huge road win. Browns are 500 right now. I'm not saying they're going to threaten for the division because I still think Cincinnati is great, at least in the regular season. But the AFC doesn't have powerhouses. As of right now, you've got 3-2 Houston and 3-1 Denver. Those are your two wild card teams. And I still think Denver's going to win that division over Cincinnati. I wouldn't bet money on it, though. No way. I'm not betting against San Diego this year. But just, Cleveland's going to look better than I thought they would. I would not be surprised if they finished off better than the Steelers, because the Steelers look terrible. And we'll find that out next week for sure. And then we've got the Titans on the other end of the spectrum, who just can't do anything. Like, they have no running back. They have no quarterback. Their offensive line is looking worse than they should. I like Ken Wisenhunt. I think he's a good coach. Look at what he did in Arizona. And don't say, he had a great quarterback. No, he had a quarterback at the end of his career and managed to revitalize him into something special and got Arizona to their only Super Bowl in their history. And they are one of the oldest franchises in the NFL. A lot of people don't realize that. Back when they were the Chicago Cardinals and then the St. Louis Cardinals and then the Phoenix Cardinals and now the Arizona Cardinals. They're one of the oldest franchises. They've been around since, the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, something like that. He led that team to the playoffs. And yes, they had some pretty good talent. But remember, Anquan Boldin, he was out at that point, right? It was Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Boldin had already been traded to the Ravens. Is that how it worked? I feel like that's how it worked. And they lost on a last-second play in the Super Bowl. That's the kind of coach Ken Wisenhunt is. So I think even if they go 2-14 this year, you don't get rid of him. I hate when they fire good coaches after a year. I understand ownership changes. I think if the Bills don't make the playoffs or have a pretty, have a 6-10, 7-9 team, I don't think Marone lasts, but this is his second year. They've got a lot of talent, and they have new ownership. Those kind of situations I understand a little bit more than here are the Tennessee Titans. You have two pretty good number 2 receivers. You have a couple change of pace running backs, and you have a quarterback bust. Make this work. He's in a better situation than Dennis Allen had in Oakland. But not by very much. Because at least they've got a quarterback of the future. If you give Ken Wisenhunt David Carr, these Titans are probably 500 or better. Oh, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but they'd stand a better chance. At least in the long term. So yeah, it's weird. This is not a huge marquee game, but it just shows the Browns are scrappy. When they made the playoffs at 10-6 way back in 2002 or whatever, 2003, it was because they were the Cardiac Browns. They were 10-6 or whatever they were and won a division, and they almost lost every single game. So we got that coming back, which is fine. Brian Hoyer, I'm rooting for him. I don't care about the hometown hero angle. I think that's cool, but, I don't like Johnny Manziel. I think he's kind of a douche, and I like seeing him on the bench because I don't think he should be rewarded for being a douchebag. Next game we got is the Eagles 34-28 over the Rams in a game that the Eagles almost blew. And Austin Davis, man. He got named the starter for the rest of the year, I believe. Good call on Jeff Fisher's part. Even if Fisher's not the one coaching next year, and I feel like he stands a chance because he's got the pedigree. Austin Davis, I think next year gives him a better chance to win than Sam Bradford. I think they were saying he's already had a better season so far than Bradford ever had. Even if I see 375 yards with 3 touchdowns, 29 for 49, so whatever that works out to, 60% or more. Even if there's, I don't know, I can't see. I feel like he had a pick or two. Even with 2 interceptions, that's not a bad game, considering you're coming from behind the whole time. So, and they have no wide receivers. He's throwing it to, he's making Quick into his primary guy. The Eagles, I'd worry about them. They are the worst looking 4-1 team, I think, in the league right now. They have the high-powered offense. Foles isn't the beast like he was, you can call it sophomore slump, and there's a bit of that. But I don't think the Eagles are Super Bowl contenders. I really don't. But depending on how the season goes, and maybe they'll turn around. Their offensive line is in shambles. They're all injured. So maybe they'll get a little bit better. And I'm not saying Chip Kelly's a bad coach. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying he's overrated, nothing like that. I'm just saying I think the Eagles exploded last year because of that offense. Teams are starting to figure it out a bit. And they're not consistently playing 2 halves of football. Whoops. So, if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm feeling confident. But I'd be a little careful because the AFC East, or the NFC East, is starting to look like the NFC Beast again. Because next up, we got the Giants, 30-20 over the Falcons. Giants on a 3-game winning streak. It's about time. Last season, they did that on after they went 0-6, they started winning games or something ridiculous like that. So at least they were just 0-2 this year. 3-2, they're right back. They're 1 game back in the division. They're right in the thick of it. But they look efficient, and all of a sudden, Eli passing 70% of his passes doesn't sound as asinine as we used to think it would. So they look pretty good. The Falcons just prove 2-0 at home, 0-3 on the road. Them and the Saints are starting to become eerily similar, which is why I think it's, the South is just going, the NFC South is going to shit right now. Almost got in trouble with all of the hillbillies. And I guess that'll get me in trouble with the hillbillies now. It's, I don't know. I don't know what to feel about the Falcons. Their offense is dying, huge, but their defense, what the fuck are you doing? And even, everyone's like, oh, their offensive line is terrible. Yeah, but they're still putting up a ton of yards and they're putting up points. 20 points in a loss is not exactly bad. We're so used to seeing these humongous offensive outputs that we forget that 20 points in a game, you're not doing bad. Not at all. You can be doing better, but, you're not doing bad. But if you have a defense, like an elite defense, you can win with 20 points a game. The Ravens, when they won their first Super Bowl, and you kids are too young to remember this, when they won their first Super Bowl, they went through, I think, a 5-game stretch where they didn't score an offensive touchdown, or they scored 1 offensive touchdown or something ridiculous like that, and they went 4-1 in those games. You don't need an elite defense to win with 20 points a game, but if you have a pretty good, maybe a top 10, and the Falcons are far from that. I don't know exactly where they rank, but they're not that good. Continuing with my bashing of the South, the Saints beat the Buccaneers 37-31 in overtime. Mike Glennon is the one who should be starting at quarterback for this team. I kind of bought into Josh McCown a little bit too. He looked good. I like rooting for the underdog. I like rooting for that guy who it's like, oh, I have your rookie card. I'd like to see that go up in value a little bit. Or not rookie card. I have a jersey card of his from way back in the day in Arizona. And then that reminded me that Josh McCown failed in Arizona with Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden as his wide receivers. And they wanted him to come to Tampa Bay with good wide receivers, but not that good. You know, Mike Evans could be pretty good, but will he get to Anquan Bolt, or will he get to the same level as Larry Fitzgerald? Who knows? Is Vincent Jackson Anquan Bolden? Not even close. He's really good, but Anquan Bolden, do you see the level he played at now? And just remember, he's taken a few steps down, and I'd still take Anquan Bolden over Vincent Jackson right now. Excuse me. But I think the big story here, I picked the Saints to go to the Super Bowl to represent the NFC. I have zero confidence in that pick right now. And 100% honest with you, except for the Seahawks, I don't know who I would pick out of the NFC to make the playoffs. You know, the Seahawks seem like the only safe team because they can win in all sorts of ways because they've still got that defense. Russell Wilson is looking better and better. But besides the Seahawks, who do you go with? I don't know. So the Saints just 2-3, 2-0 at home, 0-3 on the road. Drew Brees is still having a pretty good year. Like, don't let that fool you. He's not just shitting the bed or anything. He is having a pretty decent season. Maybe not 5,500 yards and 40 touchdown season, but he's having a pretty good year. So don't worry about him as much. Worry about the rest of the team. You know, their offense will be fine. Their defense looks worse. You know, and the Buccaneers, maybe if they go with Mike Glennon from the beginning, you know, maybe they're 2-3 or 3-2 and still stand a chance. Maybe not. I don't know. But Josh McCown was very clearly not the answer. He will not be the answer. So let's just move on with Mike Glennon, see what we got. You know, he's not a rookie or anything. You know, you still got to figure out what you got. But you could have something good. You could have a decent starter in the NFL. So I wouldn't give up on Glennon just yet. And McCown is very valuable on the bench. I'm not saying get rid of him. I don't know how much money they're paying him, but he's very valuable on the bench. So there's no reason to kick him off. But if I'm a Saints fan, I'm actually just as pessimistic about their season as I am for the Bucs. And then you go from teams to be pessimistic about to... Listen, guys. I'm sorry. I have a stance as a Bills fan to hate the Cowboys. I have to. I have to do it. 2 Super Bowls in a row, Bills got annihilated twice. But remember what I said earlier about old school football and how I'm really a fan of that? The Cowboys are winning with the best offensive line in football and arguably the best running back in football now that Adrian Peterson's out. And I'd go a step further and say he might even be better than Adrian Peterson even if he was playing. Easy to say for me. Who knows? Adrian Peterson could have 1,000 yards already. We don't know. Cowboys are 4-1 after taking care of business, 20-17 in overtime against the Texans at home, but it was really on the road. More Texans fans than Cowboys fans, and Tony Romo still with 324 yards and 2 touchdowns, but this team's winning close games. They're running the ball. DeMarco Murray is one of 3 running backs of all time to have 100 yards rushing in his first 5 games. The other 2 being Jim Brown and O.J. Simpson. And those are 2 of the best running backs to ever play the game. Their defense isn't... I mean, they're better than we thought. Everyone thought that the defense for the Cowboys would be historically bad. Like, they thought it'd be the worst defense of all time. And no, they're still doing good. But... I hate the fact that I'm rooting for this team in the back of my mind. You know, and it was weird because this is the pick that I changed. I changed 2 picks the last second. The first one I changed, I had originally picked San Francisco over Kansas City, and I went back because I'm like, okay, Alex Smith revenge game, and I like Alex Smith more than Kaepernick. That one burned me. In this one, I picked the Texans. But my reasoning for picking the Texans was because in my head, I knew the Cowboys would win. And every time I think that about certain teams, I know I'm going to get the pick wrong. And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I just went with the Cowboys. And they almost blew it, but they didn't. It was a lot easier for me to make that pick knowing Ryan Fitzpatrick was the quarterback for the Houston Texans. And I don't see why Ryan Mallett isn't out there. I know they're 3-2, but it's not like, so are the Bills, and they benched their starting quarterback. Sometimes you can be a good team and you can get slightly better with another player. If Ryan Mallett was a little more established as a back, if it was in reverse, it was Mallett sucking and Fitzpatrick on the bench, maybe you do that. But the Texans, J.J. Watt still had a reasonable game. I mean, Tony Romo made that hell of a play, getting away from him and making that throw. But J.J. Watt was still disrupting things, even with that offensive line. So that just goes to show how fucking good he is. And you'll never have the stat lines for it. You cannot, defensive linemen, you cannot go by the stats because you just never know. Because hurries aren't really an official stat. Quarterback hits definitely aren't. You just never, you can see the pressure, how many double teams he takes on, that's definitely not a stat. 50% of the time he's out there, he's getting double teamed and opening up lanes for everybody else on his team. So J.J. Watt is still a beast, but the Cowboys just sticking to their game plan, running that ball. Man, the Cowboys look like one of those, like I said, old school football, run the ball, pound it down their throat with a passing game to complement it. And look at that, 324 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. DeMarco Murray, 136 yards on the ground on 31 attempts. It feels like it's 2002 all over again. It's just great. Texans, they're cooling off, obviously, but I wouldn't bet against them. Obviously, they've got more wins right now than they had all of last season. But it doesn't, they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. But the reason why I don't know if they'll win that division is because the Colts win 20-13 over the Ravens in a game that was kind of a big deal because the Ravens, as much as I'm trying to pick against them, here's the difference. Adrian Peterson, you lose him for the Vikings. That's your best player, hands down. There's no arguing that. It's tough to come back from when you're already a team that was probably staring 6-10 at the face before the season even started. Taking Adrian Peterson away and you're hoping for 4-12. They're going to do better than that. I think they'll definitely do better than that. I wouldn't be surprised seeing them at the 7-9, 8-8 range because I think Teddy Bridgewater is legit. And he can sort of make up the difference. And those running backs, Asiata and McKinnon, they're not looking terrible. But the Ravens, all they lost was Ray Rice, who was a running back on a decline. That's all they lost. That's it. So that's 3-1. That's the team that's a threat. And if they win that game, they are number 1 in their division right now. That's how important this game could have been for the Ravens. And when you're talking about playing another, 2 teams playing who could potentially both win their division, it makes it a huge game. And the Colts come out 20-13. So Andrew Luck cooled down and is still not the favorite for MVP. I'm with everyone else. I think it's either Phillip Rivers or J.J. Watt are the MVP right now. And Phillip Rivers would get it in that argument. But yeah, I think the Colts are going to have figured it out. I think the Colts have. Chuck Pagano's a really good coach. And I think the Colts have figured it out, and I think they'll be okay. They will contend for the division. I think it's Houston and the Colts going against each other this week. So that's there are a couple big division games coming up this week because the Patriots are going to Buffalo to Buffalo, and then you get the Colts and Texans, I believe, playing, and those have huge early season ramifications because you look at both divisions. Houston and Indianapolis, those are the only 2 teams who can win a division. It's not going to be the Titans, and it's definitely not going to be the Jaguars. Jaguars are going to be eliminated from playoff contention by week 8. The Bills and Patriots, you can make an argument for Buffalo, or for Miami, that they could contend for that division as well. But realistically, the Bills have, the running joke is 21 great 21 great starters that you would take on any other team, and it's just that 22nd guy playing quarterback that you're not 100% in love with. And in the Patriots, they're struggling. You can make the argument that the Bills have more talent than the Patriots in a lot of areas, except for the important one. If you put Tom Brady on the Bills, they're 5-0 right now. I make that, because I don't think Tom Brady has slipped that much. So, there are a couple big games. There might be a couple more. I'll get into that in a next one, in a next podcast when I'm doing the previews. But, Colts and Texans are the only two in contention. Maybe a 3-horse race in the AFC East. But after this week, it might just be a 1. Next up, you got, speaking of those Jaguars, Steelers win 17-9 over the Jaguars. What the hell, Pittsburgh? What the hell? Steelers are an ugly 3-2. The Jaguars, Bortles is a rookie. But Ben Roethlisberger is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and you're only putting up 17 points. Antonio Brown might be the best wide receiver in the league. 5 catches, 84 yards, no touchdowns. There's a lot to love about Pittsburgh, but I think they're becoming, and I guess it's a funny comparison, they're becoming sort of like what the Cowboys were. And I don't think it's going to be as over the same period of time as the Cowboys were. And for all we knew, the Cowboys haven't broken that. But the Steelers is kind of a middling team lately. So, 3-2, they might go 7-9, 8-8 again. It's Tomlin will have his job security. Because Bill Cowher went through worse times. And and I think, can you argue that Cowher was a better coach than Tomlin? Cowher had enough time, nobody gave up on him. He was allowed to sort of get through some of his struggles. You used to be able to do that back in the day. If you went 3-13, no one's talking about your job the next season unless you are doing an absolutely terrible job coaching that team. But, you used to get some patience. And I think if Tomlin goes 8-8 again, I don't think his job should be on the line. I don't think that should even be a question. He's still got a Super Bowl ring and another appearance. There is no reason for anyone to think that the Steelers are going to fire Tomlin after this, even if they go 8-8. And they could turn it around and they could go 10-6 or 11-5 and win a division. We don't know. It's only 5 games into the year. But again, they win by 8 points over the Jaguars. And I don't know, the Patriots barely beat out the Raiders and then got blown out by Kansas City. So are the Steelers looking to get blown out next week? I don't know. I don't know the schedule by heart. But, who knows what we're going to get out of the Steelers. Like I said, the only teams we really know what we're getting with are the Seahawks, the Raiders, and the Jaguars, and everyone else is a crapshoot. And I guess the Broncos as well. Because the Broncos win 41-20 over the Cardinals. Cardinals were one of 2 unbeaten teams left in the league. And now there are none. Spoilers for a couple games in the future. But Broncos, Peyton Manning throws for touchdown pass number 500, which is a huge milestone, and he celebrates it by throwing 3 more on top of that. 479 yards, which is, amazingly, that's a career high. 4 touchdowns, and the play everyone's talking about is when they the chop block or whatever you want to call it on Calais Campbell, which I've seen it. Obviously it was a penalty. This is kind of fucked up. But it wasn't intentionally. They weren't trying to kill the guy. Because was it Clady who was on Calais Campbell? When Thomas sort of went low on him, Clady went to go engage him, realized what was happening, and backed off. So I don't think it was intentionally a dirty play. I just think it worked out that way. But I don't think you should, unless you're Warwick Dunn blocking Warren Sapp, look up that one from Monday Night Football about 15 years ago. Unless that is the situation, you should not go low on somebody. And for those who don't really understand it, you probably know who Warwick Dunn is, or not Warwick Dunn, Warren Sapp is, because he's on the NFL Network and, Hall of Fame defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Warwick Dunn, also a former Buccaneer, but went to Atlanta and really had just as good, if not a better career there. So Warren Sapp is huge. What is he? 6'2", fucking 350 pounds. Huge monster of a man. Warwick Dunn was 5'7" and 175 pounds. So he got down on his hands and knees and took the legs out from underneath Warren Sapp to block him. Those are the only acceptable scenarios. I don't think you should be going low on people, especially not when you're a 6'6" tight end. It's like, no, engage that guy. That's just cheating. Ooh. Did you guys see that block? Wait, hold on. I want to instant replay that one. Speaking of blocking, you want to see how you properly block someone. Watch right here. Number 75, the right guard. So right between the quarterback and the halfback right there. Oh, that wasn't even him. That was the pulling guy. That was the left guard coming over and just smoking him. That's how you block a disruptive defensive tackle. And again, the Bears don't really have a good defensive line. I'm sorry, I was enjoying the game and not talking about the real world. I apologize. But I think the Broncos, I picked them to win the Super Bowl. There are a lot of good teams right now, but we're only 5 games in. But I am still confident that at least the Broncos stand a realistic chance at winning the Super Bowl. They're 3-1. The Chargers look better than them right now. But the Broncos still look pretty damn good. It's, and I'm not the only one saying this, they're just kind of boring because they're so efficient and they're so good. And except for that game against Seattle, it's sort of, oh yeah, they win. And they take the second half off, but it's because by the end of the first half, they're up 35-0, and it's like, yeah, all right, we can pretend that the Indianapolis Colts game was closer than it was. You know, it was what, 31-27 or 34-27? It wasn't that close. It was 34-0 at one point. And the Broncos were like, yeah, we're good. Broncos are looking really strong, though. Their offense has sort of cooled off a bit. You can't repeat that kind of pace unless you're playing Madden. But Broncos look really good. I was thinking of doing a quarter poll power rankings, but I figured I'll do that maybe the midway point when you've got a more realistic idea of who some of these teams are. Next up, 49ers. I got the 3 games I got wrong were the 49ers game. I picked the Bears over the Panthers, and then I also picked the Bengals over the Patriots because, again, I picked the Bengals in every game. I knew the Patriots were going to win, so I almost want to call that just a half loss. But I had to, I'm going to root for the Bengals, so I'm going to take their losses too. Same thing with the Bills. Luckily, they're just both having decent seasons so far. But yeah, 49ers 22-17 over the Chiefs. Didn't really come down to the quarterbacks as much as maybe people were hoping for storyline's sake, but it's the whole John Harbaugh thing. I'm of the mindset, I've always loved Bill Parcells because he won. Marty Schottenheimer maybe didn't have the best postseason record, but he won. Marty Schottenheimer gets fired after a 14-2 season in San Diego and replaced with Norv Turner. Norv Turner is not, he's a great offense. There's a lot of guys, great offensive coordinators. They inherit talented teams. Norv Turner had Phillip Rivers and almost buried that guy. Or was it Norv Turner? Yeah. Norv Turner almost buried him. And then Ken Wisenhunt is the one who put him right back on the right path last year. But you look at some of these guys, Jim Harbaugh. It is Jim. See, it's funny because when John Harbaugh got a coaching job, I'm like, is that the quarterback for the Colts back in the day? But no. Yeah, so Jim Harbaugh, here you go. Starting quarterback for the Colts. Right now it's Andrew Luck. Before that, it was not Peyton Manning. Who the fuck? Jim Sorgi. Who the hell started during that year that Peyton Manning missed? Before that, it was Peyton Manning, and before that, it was Jim Harbaugh. If you want to know how long Peyton Manning was really a mainstay. Jim Harbaugh is a fiery coach. I talked about it a little earlier when I was talking about Schwartz. He's going to piss people off, and that's fine. But if he's butting heads with management, he doesn't stand a chance. And there's a lot of guys. I don't think any coach, I know it's a more common opinion. Nowadays, you can't be the GM and the coach. It doesn't work that way anymore. There's too much information. There's too much going on. And unfortunately, you look at Bill Belichick, it's astounding the amount of success they've had considering he's also the GM, because that means 31 other coaches have an advantage on Bill Belichick because all they have to worry about is studying tape and making game plans. Belichick also has to take into account talent searching. And I'm sure he's got guys working for him and scouts and everything. But I feel like it's a tough job, and I think coaches should be allowed to have a lot of personnel input. Absolutely. I don't think, if you look at Buffalo, I think it was the report came out that Doug Marrone didn't want Kyle Orton. They just sort of forced him into it. I feel like the coach should have some input on the guys you're going after. Be like, hey, this guy doesn't fit our scheme. Stop going after names. Then you're going to screw yourself over. But if you don't need to be the GM. You just need to be able to say, hey, I'm an established coach. Jim Harbaugh should be able to say, look, Aldon Smith needs his 10-year contract extension. And get it. Or Harbaugh should be able to say, look, Stevie Johnson is looking pretty good. We got him for 4th rounder. Let's see if we can get a 3rd out of him because I feel like we've got enough with Crabtree and Bolden. He should be able to make those, at least put his input in and have it taken seriously. But I don't know what they're butting heads about. It sounds like they're both just kind of hard-headed. And you've got to have chemistry. And I always go to, you can tell what sports I really pay attention to these days. If you look at WWE, every single person from Triple H all the way down the line to Chavo Guerrero will say Vince McMahon is a hard-headed person. He wants things his way, and that's it. Unless you have a good argument with him and some compelling arguments, and then you can sort of steer him. He will then say it was his idea and proceed on, but he will take your advice. I feel like if you have that kind of relationship, it can work, but it sounds like that's not how things are going in San Francisco. It just sounds like two stubborn hardheads arguing. Because arguing can be productive. There is productive arguments. And it sounds like Balk or whoever it is and Jim Harbaugh are not having that. So if Harbaugh is going to move on, then let him. The reporters saying even if he wins the Super Bowl, he's out. I think you're fucking dumb if you do that. But if it's that bad, number one, trade deadline hasn't come up. Trade him now. They want to stay in the Bay Area. Oakland Raiders are looking for it. And guess what? The Raiders will give him the GM spot. Because they're going to be out of GM pretty soon. So, ship him off to the Raiders. Because they're getting a high draft pick. You take their number 3, you take their 3rd round pick, it's as good as a number 2. So, take that and move on. And just save yourself the drama for the rest of the year. But I don't know if it works that way with coaches. In baseball, you can do that. In hockey, you can do that. In the NBA, you do that. In football, it doesn't work that way. Because I remember McDaniels got fired. When he got fired from Josh McDaniels, when he got fired from Denver, Patriots had to get permission to sign him to be their offensive coordinator. In the NHL, you can see guys coaching for 3 different teams during the course of a season. So I don't know that would work. But if they're gonna get rid of him, especially if he's a lame duck right now. 4 straight conference championship games. 3 straight. This is year 4 of a 5-year deal. 3 straight conference championship games. 1 Super Bowl appearance. Didn't win, but had a very good game. And you don't give this guy a contract extension? I've seen coaches get contract extensions for going, 8-8 and looking promising. 3 straight conference. This guy has made your team from a laughingstock into a legit Super Bowl contender every single year he's been there. So that's the proof right there that they don't want him around very much longer. But going to the other side of the bay, well, not really the other side of the bay, but same state. San Diego Chargers, 31-0 over the Jets. Jets look terrible. It's not Geno Smith's fault. They brought in Michael Vick. He looks worse. He just had a longer time to do it. But Vic didn't exactly look, he wasn't lighting it up. I think they were both 1 for 9 at one point. Neither one of them completed a pass, I think, further than 10 yards down the field. They both look terrible, which is, number one, Michael Vick is not your answer at quarterback. I'm not going to go with the whole dog killer route. I think that's the sort of okay, really? But he's still a 37-year-old quarterback or whatever the hell he is who relied on his legs for most of his career. Had 1 good year as a pocket passer, but that's it. You're going to bring him in to cut down on your penalties? Are you kidding me? So, or not penalties, turnovers. So I don't know. I'm glad that experiment's over. They already came out and said Geno he's going to be their starting quarterback. And I think that's what you should do. You know, the Bills make the move. It's different. The Bills are trying to contend for that title, for the AFC East title. The Jets are 1-4 right now. They're just trying to. They've got a tough stretch right now. I think they're just trying to make it through there, and maybe win one more game over the next 3, because I think they got a soft spot in their schedule later on. But that soft spot's starting to not look that soft, because I think one of those soft games is supposed to be the Bills, and that's not as soft a game as they thought it was. With the Chargers, Phillip Rivers, just career resuscitation. Brandon Oliver, who the hell is this guy? You know, maybe it's a good thing that Woodhead and Ryan Matthews get hurt. You know, maybe give Oliver a shot, because Ryan Matthews hasn't really done much, and Woodhead's not an every down back. He's a nice little change of pace guy. San Diego Chargers, I think if I did a power rankings right now, Chargers would be number 1. Or at least, no, they would be number 1 or 2. I don't know if I know they beat the Seahawks, but they beat them at home. So I'd either put them first, tied for first, or second. And Chargers, Seahawks, Broncos, jumble them up. That's your top 10. Okay, because the Broncos played close in San Diego, or in Seattle against the Seahawks. So the home teams keep winning those games. So it's a toss-up. It really is. Not bad for a division. You know, Seahawks won a division a couple years ago at 7-9, and the Broncos won it at 8-8, and so did the Chargers. So not bad for that division. And now the game that I was hoping wouldn't go this way. Patriots 43-17 over the Bengals. Now this is number 1 because I'm rooting for the Bengals. I want to see them do well. And number 2 because I wanted to see the Patriots go down because I'm a Bills fan. So didn't get my wish. Gronkowski decided to show up. 6 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. Tom Brady, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. But again, see, that's the Patriots lighting it up, and Brady didn't exactly have, oh my God, record-setting numbers. He still didn't even throw for 300 yards. He didn't have to. But that's what I mean. Like, the Patriots, they're lighting it up now, but they're not lighting it up. They got a lot of points off turnovers. It's their defense that has to win them these games. Their offense isn't really going to do too much. They just have to be opportunistic. But I don't think the Patriots are done. You know, I don't think they're a 12-win team this year. I think they're maybe 9 or 10, best case. I don't think they'll do any worse than 8-8. Even if things start to go to shit, like say they lose both games to Buffalo and the Bills win a division and the Patriots are sitting there at 8-8, I think that's worst case scenario. So, if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm not. I have a buddy one of the guys at work, he's a Patriots fan. I talked to him after the Kansas City game. He's like, it's a lost season for the Patriots. I'm like, really? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how bad you lose or how huge you win. It counts as one game. Yes, they annihilated the Bengals in this game. It's one game. They got annihilated by the Chiefs. It's one game. You don't lose twice because you had one bad game. So I'm not worried if I'm a Patriots fan. I'm not worried if I'm a Bengals fan either. You know, again, they can't win in primetime. But I think the Bengals at this point are just sort of like assuming they can probably go 10-6 and win the division, and then just make some moves in the postseason, because they still look really good. They're still a very talented roster, and I still think they're a top 5 team in the league right now. But again, nothing means anything. Yes, they got beaten by the Patriots, and that used to mean something. But if the Patriots finish the year 8-8, 7-9, and the Bengals are sitting there at 9-7, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe the Bengals weren't that good. And even if the Bengals are 13-3, it's sort of like you lost to the middling Patriots this year. It's just everything looks different at the end of the year. That's why you always look at strength of schedule in college football, because it means something, because you never know, just because the team's good right now. You know, if I'm sitting there and I'm scheduling, say I'm Alabama and I'm looking to toughen up my schedule. Okay, if I'm Alabama, I don't really have to. say I'm from like Michigan, and I'm trying to toughen up my schedule because the Big Ten's getting, smoked out there. And I schedule number 1 FSU for the second to last week of the season or whatever it works with conference scheduling. And then all of a sudden I get to FSU and they're 7-4 and not ranked. It doesn't mean as much, and it makes it even worse if you lose to them at that point. It's the same thing, if it all depends on what these records come out as. So a bad loss, like the Chargers whooping the Jets, it's a 4-1 team demolishing a 1-4 team. You're not reading that much into it. But all of a sudden, the Bengals get whooped by a team that everyone else had buried, and suddenly people are freaking out. No, you don't know, because you don't know what the Patriots are going to look like later in the year. There's still maybe panic, but there might not be. Patriots could prove all of us wrong, go 12-4, get a first-round bye. Bengals go 12-4 and have to play in the first round because of that loss. And it's like, you know what? That was a good team you faced who was coming off a lot of animosity. So don't worry about big losses right now. Just worry about the big picture. The close games are more important than the blowouts. If you can win the close games, doesn't matter who the hell you're playing. You just have to win the close games. You just like for New England to not have to play a close game against the Raiders. And in the final game of the week, we've got the Seahawks 27-17 over the Redskins. In a game that started looking like a game, but I'm looking here. Russell Wilson, leading passer, obviously, for the Seahawks. 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 6 incompletions. Leading rusher for the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, with 11 rushes for 122 yards and a touchdown. Fantasy football players everywhere just wet their pants a little bit in excitement. Kirk Cousins, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did he have any picks? I feel like he might have. I can't see it right now. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Is Kirk Cousins going to be the answer to RG3? No. And I don't care how good he is. He could still have not thrown a pick so far this year. If the Redskins are sitting at 1-4 and Kirk Cousins look good, it doesn't really matter because when Robert Griffin comes back, it's like, well, you're not winning games with this team, so I'm going to put my game back in. Kirk Cousins is making a very good argument to be worth a second-round pick next year when they try and trade him. But that's about it. So, all he's doing now is improving his draft stock, I think. Because I don't think the Redskins are going to... we're sort of like, oh, yeah, with Kirk Cousins, maybe they'll look good. They're not. They look a little more competitive. Like I said, I'm an old school guy, so if I'm running the team, I give Cousins the full season. I just let RG3 sit out. Because who even knows? Unless I see Kirk Cousins floundering, then it's like, all right, RG3, go back in there. But unless that's the case, I'm just sitting back, and I'm just letting Cousins do his thing, and at the end of the year, I'll determine which one of them I want to keep. Because I've seen enough out of RG3, where I kind of know what I'm getting out of him. And I have to understand that if I'm keeping RG3 as my starting quarterback, I'm required to keep another pretty good quarterback on the roster. If you keep Kirk Cousins... And it remains to be seen what his injury history is like. You always got to have a good backup. But if you have RG3, you have to have the best backup quarterback in football. You're going to need a guy like Kyle Orton. You can't just get by with Jim Sorgi like the Colts did all those years with Peyton Manning. You have to actually put someone in there. So, I don't know. I don't feel bad for your Redskins because you still have a racist name. I'm just never aware enough to intentionally not say your name. I'll leave that up to the good podcasters. But yeah, so the Seahawks 3-1. So like I said, 12-3 on the week. Pretty good week. Not going to complain about that. 2 picks that changed at the last second, they equaled out. So it doesn't mean anything to me. But yeah, so big week next week with some big division games. And I don't know. Maybe after week 6, we'll sort of have some idea of who the hell is doing what. Or we'll have no idea whatsoever. Let's peek real quick at the schedule. Yeah, Colts and Texans. Okay, well, that's what I got to do. I got to pick my Thursday night game now, don't I? Colts at the Texans. I'm going to go... This is a tough one. Andrew Luck is a beast, and he's very mobile. Ryan Fitzpatrick's played 2 bad games in a row, so he's due for a good one. I can't pick again. I'm going to go with Houston. I guess this can be a set pick. Okay, let's look at the rest of the schedule real quick. Who a pretty obvious nominee, but I'm not going to go for it. Obvious nominee, but I'm not going to go for it. I see another one down there. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Texans. They're at home. They don't look bad. J.J. Watt versus, if he avoids Costanzo, he'll be in good shape. So, yeah, I'm going with the Texans. I'll probably be wrong, but that's fine. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the little like button down there. If you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe to me. Like I said, hopefully the next one will probably go up either Friday or Saturday. I'm not really sure. It depends on when I feel like putting it up. But until then, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.